Thank you for joining CU Bands and Fans podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by Homegrown KIO. Homegrown KIO is on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. It is a stellar show featuring the great songs that have come from bands originating in Champaign-Urbana. Listen at 107.9 on your FM dial, at 1079WKIO.com, or ask Alexa to play WKIO. Hey, welcome to CU Bands and Fans, where musicians tell their story podcast. Our guest with us tonight is Michael Carpenter, and Michael is with the band Decadents. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Terry. Hey, Zach. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Hi. Good evening.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Let's start, Michael, with where you started in music.
It's a very localized story. So I'm a townie, to use that term. I grew up in Urbana and I moved to Champaign. Urbana for my first 18 years, then my last 18 here in Champaign. And my music journey started when I was like 3 or 4 years old with piano, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, all of that. And eventually worked my way up to drums when I was 11 or 12. And my drum teacher, Ian Shepard, who is still very active in the local music scene, I took lessons with him at the back of Skins and Tins and got my first drum set. And then when I was 18 and went to school at the U of I, difficult to get a drum set into a dorm room. So I got a really kind of chintzy old acoustic guitar and really tried to earnestly work on becoming a better guitar player. So, man, I've been in bands since I was 15. So 20 plus years. It was drums all the way up until I was about 22 or 23. And I think that I wanted to be more of a focal point up front. And as a drummer, I love drumming. But if you want to write songs and you want to be able to deliver them, sometimes you got to get off the drum throne and grab the guitar and head up front. So that was kind of my transition when I was 22 or 23. And that's about when Decadence started back in 2010.
Oh, you started in 2010 with Decadence. So how did that derive? And before I say that, back in that day when you said, drums were difficult to get in and out. Well, now you have electronic drums. You could have, now.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't be a problem now.
Yeah, wouldn't be a problem now. But
yeah,
I could see your turmoil. And Ian Shepard is amazing. He is still just like so amazing. We had him on one of our podcasts as well. Just an amazing musician. So how did Decadence begin? And Decadence does its own music. So you've been doing original music for years. Had you always done?
Correct.
You mentioned you were in a band 20 years ago. Like, what was your start band?
The first band in high school, our name was Sagacity. And the song I played first in a band was Island in the Sun by Weezer, which is not a complex drum part at all. But the rhythm guitarist was a little bit leery because I was from Urbana. They were from Champaign. They didn't know this kid. And then immediately they were like, oh, all right, he's in the band. So we started with Weezer and Nirvana covers, and then pretty soon we started writing originals. And I could provide input as a drummer, but it was difficult to say to a guitarist, hey, what if you try this? Because I wasn't very familiar with playing guitar when I was 15 or 16. So Sagacity was our second high school band, and that was more nu metal, kind of like rap metal vocals. And but in hindsight, I just appreciate the time that we had in it, and three of my very best friends were in that band with me. And then we got to college, and it was a little touch and go, and 2 or 3 different bands, none of really any consequence. Before, after college, there was this void of I got a few song ideas on guitar. Very much influenced by Zeppelin, and Queens of the Stone Age was a big influence as far as how can you write riff-based rock music. And I felt that there was a spot locally that we could fill. But it still took a good year and a half to really get Decadence going. The only place that would have us is the Iron Post. Paul, who passed away within the last year or two, thank goodness for him, because he gave us our first like 6 or 7 gigs. We were an unknown commodity, and we were super loud and super green. But he he gave us that platform, and then we just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, the Iron Post's been known, Paul's been known to, like, that's his legend, is that he just allowed so many bands to come in there that were green or whatever, had original music or whatever it was. He did give them that platform. So we're all very grateful for that. We miss him tremendously. So who began Decadence with you?
So we began it with our first drummer was Chris Brady, who moved to Florida in 2012, and our bass player was my good friend Kenton. So we were trio at first, and my lead chops have never been great, and they certainly weren't then. We went through lead guitarists like Spinal Tap went through drummers, pretty much. I mean, like, and then we finally we had a gig with Stoneface with Daryl on vocals, and then they had this. There were three guys that weren't quite my dad's age, but they were older than me, and then there was Mike Solomon. And we were at Bentley's one time, and our drummer after the show had a few drinks, and he was feeling like courageous enough to go up to Mike and say, "Dude, you should just join our band." And Mike was like, "Great, I'd love to." Just that easy. So that was in 2011. Mike has been with us pretty much from the start. And then in 2012, before we recorded, Chris Brady's on our first album, but Ben Donaldson joined us right after that. And he's been with us for the last 10 years. So right now it's us three. It's a trio again, but these are the two other guys I'm playing with.
Yeah. Okay. So it's still you, Mike, and Ben.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's fantastic. And you guys have several. I mean, you guys have recorded a lot of music in this period of time. We have in our library, we have the what is it, folks, hard folk,
yes, the third album.
Yeah, hard folk, yeah, which I love that album. I was just listening to it a little bit ago. Again, Troubadour is one of my very favorites.
Thank you.
And that was in, let's see, was that 2000? When was that you recorded that one?
That was in 2015. So the chronology goes, the self-titled debut was 2012. Then in 2014 was Elegantly Wasted, our second one. The third one was the following year, Hard Folk. And then in 2020, this was March 6th, 2020. I went into Perennial Sound Studios. Ryan Groff from Elsinore and Modern Drugs runs that, to lay down 12 very basic drum and bass tracks for the fourth album. It had been 5 years. And then 3 days later, everything shuts down. So Fever Dreams, the fourth album, became very much a COVID project at my house, just piecing it together. And now we got our fifth one ready to come out here in a bit.
Yeah, I wondered, because Fever Dreams, when I was looking at all this, I was like, it said, it came out in August 2020, well, obviously you did have, like everybody else, figuring out how to get that music done and get it out there. But
yeah,
I was like, how did Fever Dreams slip by me? I couldn't even remember that one. And that must be
no way to promote it. It's
yeah.
the anomaly in the catalog, because it was very much most of the parts, apart from Mike on a few guitar and vocals, I kept the demo parts because we just couldn't arrange, just like when one lockdown was lifted, another one was in place, and it's like, to hell with it, let's just put it out. And it was very much of its time. I'm proud of it. But in the four that we've had, it's the most piecemeal, homemade. I mean, literally for 4 months I had nothing else to focus on except that. So now it's invigorating to, now that we've got the home studio set up and we're able to just kind of piece it together with the three of us, it's pretty exciting. And it feels like, 5 studio albums in, I think sometimes, like, how have we made, there's 10, 11, 12 tracks on each album, they're all original, and it's like, wow, we've written a lot. And we even for fun last practice started going through some of the deep cuts that we forgot. So when you start forgetting tracks that you wrote, that's kind of like, oh, okay, we've done a little bit, which is kind of a fun thing to look back on.
that's what struck me when I went to your website and I went to your YouTube and I went to your Facebook and I'm like, man, they have a lot of music out there recorded and put out. I couldn't believe it. It is a lot. And it's all good. I mean, it's all quality and good. And, so it's not like you were just throwing stuff out there. But that is a lot of music in a fairly short amount of time. Do you record yourself there in your?
Yeah, so behind me is the studio, and we do drum tracking first. That's the foundation of any song, and then after that, the guitars, and the bass, and then with this album that we're working on now, the fifth one, we got the demos basically last spring, from February through, let's say, May, and then actually June was when the last of 10 tracks was done, and then kind of sat on it. I could not find for the life of me the lyrical hook that I wanted to go with. I couldn't find many melodies, and then there were enough other things going on professionally and stuff that I just, it's here, I'll get back to it. And then when the new year hit, we have dove headfirst right back into it, and it's exciting because now we got this whole thing configured that anytime an idea strikes us, let's go, let's lay it down. And I think that gap between Hard Folk in 2015 and Fever Dreams in 2020, there's not going to be another 5-year gap. I get the feeling that now that we have this ease of access, that was always a hiccup for us. And there is something to be said about the first 3 albums where we rehearsed them so much and we bought 1 day of studio time to knock it all out. I mean, that's some really cool elbow grease kind of going on there. But sonically, that does limit the things that you can do with it and the time you can take on it. So while it's a different approach, the perfectionist in me likes the ability to come down here whenever I want to tweak things, add things, and all that.
Love that. I love that. And now that you've got this set, and like you said, you could just go down there when you want to or whatever. Did you guys take outside of 2020, did you guys take a break?
Yeah,
all?
and it was terrible timing too. We did from 2018, and then by the time we were ready, we had a gig lined up at Blackbird, which turned into Nola's, and now it's closed. And I'm sure we'll get to the venue discussion later because it's just like Tom Grassman said, we're in a valley. We're definitely in a vally. But no, we did
saw you at Blackbird. I think I saw you
as Mojo.
Oh, Mojo, that's right. Right.
That was
Mojo. You're right.
So we took the break. We did in 2018. So January or February 2018, at the Great Cover Up at City Center, we did Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And we had a 7-song set, and we had Roger Perlman and Tim Donaldson join us. And it went over fantastic. And we thought, well, we already got 7 songs. It was a little bit, we pushed the length of what a Great Cover Up set should be. It was like 38 minutes. And we thought, well, okay, let's just add 10 more songs. And Tom Petty songs are pretty simple. And we did the Mojo thing for most of 2018 and 2019. And there were no Decadent shows in 2018 or 19. And then 2020 hit. So when finally we did Beatles Night as Decadents in 2021, I don't remember being that nervous about any gig.
Oh my
because
gosh.
The 4 of us had not been on a stage since October of 2017. That was the last time. So we do not anticipate that. We don't gig a ton.
I remember,
but what's that? Sorry, Zach.
I remember, I think the first Mojo show you did outside of the Great Cover Up, I asked Tim Donaldson, how long are you going to do this? And he goes, oh, maybe half a dozen shows. I think you went beyond that.
Well, yeah, I'd say we probably did about 15.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit. And then the tricky thing is, and I was listening to the Tom Grassman podcast, and he likes his eggs in a few different baskets.
Yeah.
And I have much more of a one-track mind about that, where, if someone said, hey, when's Mojo playing again? I'm like, yeah, I love Mojo, but man, we're doing the Decadence thing now. And, the fun thing about a cover band like that is they tend to stick in your head. they're earworms anyways, those songs. And we all know the parts. We would just have to get together a few times and kind of knock it out. But it's always there. And I'm sure it'll be done again. But when, I'm not sure. But yeah, that was the break. So we did not play a gig as Decadence for about 3.5 years.
I thought so. I was like, there was kind of a lull there for quite a period of time, but I know the Mojo thing was happening, and that was a blast. That was
Mhm.
really a lot of fun. But yeah, I missed Decadence. I was like, I know there was a gap in there. I'm not real sure why, but that's, like you said, you if you're focusing on this, then that's what you're doing. And it sounds like you guys are back to just getting it. And when is this new album or you have a single that's gonna be released?
Yeah, so the single is dropping on Sunday, and in collaboration with you guys and WKIO, it's going to be played on Homegrown. I think they're starting the show with it on Sunday, actually. So that's 7 o'clock on 107.9. So it's kind of cool to do the throwback radio debut, and then the album, we're going to coordinate it with the show, and we're looking at August, sometime in August, and that'll just give us time for final tweaks. And if we wanted to, if we were so inclined to get a vinyl pressed, which, we were talking off the air about that, the idea of holding a vinyl of your album is just so tantalizing, but that's the cost. We're just trying to overcome that hurdle. And I get the feeling we will. So
The cover too, like, looking at the cover and, the
Mhm.
whole vinyl experience is just, I just don't think it could be beat. I don't. That is like the ultimate number one with me. But you're also obviously, if you do vinyl, will have it released where is it going to be released on, like, iTunes and all of that,
All of
Spotify?
that, all the digital stuff, no matter what. So the physical release, that's what we just got to figure out the physical part. What It's the tricky thing. It is so easy to get music out there, and I love these music streaming platforms for that. But you were talking about holding a vinyl and the cover. I mean, to me, it's a very experiential thing.
Yeah.
And the other part of it that we've always been influenced by the way vinyl records are constructed when we construct our albums. So to give you examples, when we think of the track listing, I've always thought of it in terms of there's a side A and a side B.
Yeah.
However many tracks there are, even if it's just a CD or even if you're just listening on Apple Music, okay, well, this is side A and here's the side A closer. That's got to be kind of an epic song. It's got to be the 5 or 6 minute like centerpiece of the album. You think about, not only do you have the opening track, but you have the opener of side B. To me, the flow of an album, just having listened to my dad's vinyl records, many of which he gave to me, fortunately. So he kind of got me started on my own vinyl collection, but that has always informed, and even the album covers. I had my niece over, we had a sleepover with the nieces a couple weeks ago, and she saw my album covers from Decadence, which are always, we try to be a little, I don't know if the word tantalizing or, it's always, she's like, why are they all smoking cigarettes on the covers? I'm like, oh, I was like, well, I couldn't just say because it's cool, because like we literally got videos up taken off YouTube because we have two kids smoking on the Elegantly Wasted cover. But that's what I wanted to say. Well, it's cool, it's rock and roll. She was confused by that.
That is, you don't think about that when you're doing it, like, or whatever, when you're creating it and all that. And your
No.
niece comes and calls you out on that. But yeah, I'm like you. Like, I like the way you think in that way with the side A, side B kind of thing. I just think, again, it's more of an experience when you've got that tangible. And who does create that? Is that you that creates the cover artwork? Because like Hard Folk is interesting, and you seem to stay consistent with your artwork and your branding and all of that.
Yes, it's there's an aesthetic going on with that. The images are sort of public domain images from a long time ago that they have no copyright or anything on them, so we're able to kind of grab them and tweak the look of it The latest album, and I don't think in an email I sent you the cover for the latest album, but it's a similar thing where the image is probably from the 30s or 40s or something like that. No smoking or drinking on it, so we are branching out a little bit. But it does have kind of like a twisted Norman Rockwell kind of aesthetic, and I don't know why it started with that. The first album cover was some photos that I took with a friend of the band back in 2012, but everything else has been found images that just kind of strike me. And I also like, yeah. And I also like kind of going back to the Pink Floyd or the Led Zeppelin thing, and really to an extent, the Rolling Stones when they were in their golden age, of not seeing the band on the cover, of creating an image or an aura. And whether it's, listen, we aren't the Stones or Zeppelin or Pink Floyd, obviously, but I always appreciated whether it be mystery or just, people being able to project whatever they think onto an album cover, as opposed to, well, here's just the dudes in the band.
Yeah. I can see that. I know where you're coming from with that. That's interesting. And that's kind of the way that you flow as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if on the Decadents, the self-named Decadents album or EP, that's just black with Decadence written across it. Your logo is, I can't remember. Are you guys' pictures on the back?
No. So let's see. We got, yeah. Okay. So no, this one was just, there was no text on the front. It was just the image of a friend of ours who's a model. Her name's Farron. And I was like, hey, you want to be on an album cover? Like we're just looking for something cool and like sexy. And then she was totally up for it. And the back is just our name and then track listing.
Okay.
And then
I kind of wondered if that was like Adele. She kind of looked like Adele for a minute to me.
Yeah, she has a little bit of that. You're right. You're right. And she's still doing the modeling thing up in Chicago. But yeah, that was it's always been, gosh, I mean, even I think also kind of piggybacking off the name, when we decided to name the band Decadents, people would say, well, why that name? And I remember as a kid being 11 or 12 or 13, and if I went to the library, I wasn't checking out the latest, Boxcar Children book. I was checking out, the Led Zeppelin biography from their tour manager and all the sordid details of their life. And of course, I didn't really report to my parents exactly what I was reading, but I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And I kept seeing these words like decadent or decadence. And I thought, well, that's okay. I Google search, no one called themselves that. And then it's like, well, let's play into this image. Now, as time has went on, I can look at some early lyrics. I can look at some early attempts at like gig posters and say that's a little ham-fisted, just trying to be provocative, but just kind of stumbling over ourselves. But I'm going to grant 23-year-old me a little grace with that. But then you figure out how to be provocative without being clunky about it, So I think we've gotten better with that, and we aren't too forceful with it.
Yeah. And what is the star too? What does that mean? Because the star is your logo, is that?
Yeah. So it's visible here in this thing. It's behind, we got a couple vinyls printed of that, vinyl banners. And yeah, the star logo was just something I was playing around with on Photoshop one time, trying to find I like kind of iconic iconography, hieroglyphic logo sort of things. And as far as what it means, I've never really pondered it too much. I mean, I always kind of had a token response ready to go. Like, well, it's the duality of, because it's the yin and the yang inside of the star. What duality? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it looks cool. So there's our logo. And if I think about most of my favorite bands, there is something that it's a logo you could get a tattoo of, just like I got the 4 Zeppelin symbols or the U2 Joshua tree, just these iconographic things. Yeah, I guess for the meaning, I would be lying if I said that was at the forefront. It was like, that looks cool. Let's just make it the logo.
Oh, more, yeah. I absolutely love this. I love this podcast already because
thank you.
Yeah. And what is the name of this new EP?
LP, 10 tracks,
LP.
full
My
length.
goodness.
Yeah.
Ooh,
It's called Lost in Translation. And so The Real Thing is the first single, and it's track 2 on the album. Track 1 is the title track. And lyrically, just like The Real Thing, the single that's going to debut on Sunday, the thing that I was hooking into, I'm 36, happily married. I can't tap into some of the things that I was lyrically when I was 22, 23, as far as angsty stuff. I don't at this moment have a ton of angst. So what is on my mind, I think it's usually just the way people, communication or the lack thereof, authenticity and the search for authenticity. And for Lost in Translation, we're just so bombarded with stimulus all the time that it's difficult with all this noise to really hone in on the things that make us happy or the things that we really deem to be real. So, the lyrics themselves are not as, depending on the song, they don't really sink their teeth in too much to any sort of philosophical thing. But if there was one thing that I could still relate to without the angst and without the, 18 to 22-year-old years of heartbreak that everybody goes through, it was how people we're just searching right now. We're searching through a whole lot of stuff and trying to sort what's real and what's not. And that once I found that kind of thematic hook, I was able to really start going in lyrically. And because the lyrics for us always come last, always. It's always the music first, and plug in the lyrics in there.
yeah, I was going to ask you that. If I was a songwriter, that's how I would do it. It's just automatic to me to have the music. No, I'm the opposite. I would have the lyrics first.
Many are, yeah.
Music to it. Yeah, it just behooves me how you guys can do music and then throw lyrics in there on that. That's crazy to me. But
Well, it can be tough. It can be tough because sometimes you feel like guardrails are good, but sometimes you feel like you really just got to shoehorn something in to fit the music. And this is where the band element comes in, where, there was a song on the second album called Kiss Off. And I had a verse melody that was the same as the bridge or the chorus melody. And Mike was like, it's repetitive. You feel like you need to do that, but you don't. And then he came up with something else. So that's where being able to volley off of each other is particularly in that point of the songwriting process, because it is difficult when you put lyrics on later to hear all the possibilities. You already kind of have these preconceived notions of what should work, and that means there's 1,000 options you aren't considering. Whereas the other way, you start with a good melody and build a song around that. I've never really done that. Yeah.
That's wild. But I love everything that you just said.
Lost in Translation.
Yes. Everything you said is absolutely 100%. Yeah. That's exactly, I believe that's exactly how it is. And with music as well too, because you're so able to just go anywhere and download, music. So how do you get how do you make sure that you're heard? I guess it would be so frustrating. I think to me, it would be so frustrating to make sure that it's out there and that it gets heard. How do you get these people to hear it?
That's the crapshoot. I mean, we have a nice following locally, and when we play shows, it's good to see familiar faces. But in terms of, how do you crack through whatever that invisible wall is? I don't know. I mean, we're out there, we're available anywhere. And sometimes, I'm a teacher, so my students be like, wow, are you on this or that? I'm like, yeah, we're on all of that. For them, they think, well, you've made it. You're there, right? It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, we aren't getting, crazy streaming numbers either. So, there's times where, especially given the kind of music that we play, and knowing what we were influenced by, there's times where it's like, man, like, would it have been a different reality if we came up in like 1972? And you had, I mean, I've heard all the stories about Chances Are, and well, Mabel's, I don't know if that predates that era or not, but obviously Red Lion and things like that, where the music scene, I mean, you know, everyone was caught up in that wave of basically the golden age of rock and roll. And now, and I think it's a good thing, there's so much out there. And anyone that has the equipment has the ability to just get stuff and then make it and they put it right out. I think that's a lot better than the old system where only a few bands, if you got lucky and got on a label, that was your only chance. But yeah, it's, I think we've decided a long time ago that short of, you know, having some like David Geffen discovers us and says, okay, let's sign these guys, you know, short of that, just have fun doing it with the guys in the band and playing the shows in front of however many people are there, and the creative process, and whoever comes and whoever listens. But there's no delusions of damn, like, why haven't we made it? You know, well, I mean, it's always been a crapshoot, and now more so than ever, probably.
Yeah, and I think back in the day there was that, you know, attempt or goal or whatever achievement to yeah, like somebody's going to hear us and somebody's going to sign us, and then well, and there's been many from Champaign that's happened to, you know,
Yeah.
REO and Head East, and just a lot of them that came from here that played here and was heard, and now they're, you know, national and all of that. But it's, I think it is I just like what you said about that, lost in translation, and I think it's so true. There's so much coming at us all of the time, so you have to protect yourself and kind of pick and choose what you want